Okay, I've been struggling with this audio recording thing, so I'm going to do my best, and I want to start by apologizing. I'm not good at speaking into a computer, but I'll do my best. This is my 3-day project called Rescue 911. My name is Chris Safran, and I teach sports medicine. I'm going to start by getting my students interested in the idea of developing an emergency action plan by showing them a video from X Games 2015, where I was part of the sports medicine team as an athletic trainer. And the video shows a skier being knocked unconscious during his run, which was on live TV, and the ski patrol and athletic trainers responding in a quick, timely manner to get that athlete spine boarded and transported off the mountain to the nearest hospital as quickly as possible. However, that was in a perfect situation where there were about 15 to 20 medical professionals readily available. So at a high school, especially on days where there's no games and it's just practice, often there's one athletic trainer on site, if any, and no one else. So this next video shows how a coach and a team can also be prepared in the case of an emergency. So I will explain to them that by learning hands-only CPR and knowing where the AED is and establishing specific roles for specific people in the event of emergency can help to save a life as well. The goals of an emergency action plan are important for my students to know before they start to think about their emergency action plans, or EAPs. Of course, to develop the plan as a goal, to disseminate responsibilities, to practice that plan, and then to review the plan every season. I have a chart from the National Federation of State High School Associations, which shows in 2014 how many fatal injuries and just catastrophic injuries were reported in the major sports. I'll share with my students the most common causes of catastrophic injuries and death, and these include things like heat stroke, other environmental conditions like lightning, sudden cardiac arrest, asthma, catastrophic brain and spine injuries. Of course, I'll have to define what an emergency action plan is. It is a written document. It provides established policies and procedures to help avoid confusion during an emergency. To develop this takes time, but in the end, it helps to facilitate a quick and coordinated response so that there's not complete chaos. I'm going to show them an example of an emergency action plan. So I have one at my school. I'm not going to show them my example because that is my emergency action plan. And in the end, I want them to come up with what they think would be the best emergency action plan for their specific venue. But I did find an example from the anyonecansavealife.org website. Things that are involved in an emergency action plan they need to think about, I will share with them. So who's the emergency personnel on site? How will they communicate with the EMS, the parents? What equipment will they need? Where's the transport coming from and going to? Venue directions like a map, and the roles of the first responders, and also a plan for non-medical emergencies, so other things that can happen at the school. I have an example of a map and detailed EAP that was used at a football field in Georgia. I will give them so they have an example of what they will be coming up with on their own. Of course, why this is necessary, because you could go years without actually having to use your emergency action plan. There might not be a catastrophic injury or fatality at your site, but it's often the people that say this will never happen to me that it happens, and then everyone's panicking. What do I do now? So I will reiterate the importance of having emergency action plans that are specific to each venue, all of the individuals that need to be involved. We'll talk about there's constant turnover with coaches. There's not always the same coaches that will be there. The athletic trainers might not be the same athletic trainer every year, and so on. So this needs to be prepped every single year and practiced every single year with that staff. The emergency action plan needs to be very localized, so each building and field and sport needs to have their own. We need to have a plan in place for each of those places, so phone access, field access, AED access. We need to have local EMS involved. I'll let my students know also that we don't only develop emergency action plans for the athletes. Oftentimes, emergency action plans have to be employed for fans, officials, students that may be attending a game or hanging out at practice, coaches themselves. PE classes use the facilities at our school. So this plan can be used in a bigger scope than just in athletics. We'll have to address helmet removal. So anyone that's assigned a venue that might involve lacrosse or football, they need to know who's going to know how to take the helmet or face mask off if we need to. We need to practice this every single year with every person that might be in that role. If we're traveling to another school, it's important to know their emergency action plan. It's important to communicate our emergency action plan at Hoover with the visiting athletic trainer or sports team. This will lead to our discussion on a very important part of the emergency action plan, which is getting the AED. A lot of emergency action plans involve a sudden cardiac arrest event. So if we had a sudden cardiac arrest, where is the closest AED? We have 2 on campus. So I will have my students brainstorm, hey, which one are we closest to if you're on the football field? Which one are we closest to if you're in the small gym, and etc. And then reiterating how practice is so important. So each emergency action plan takes prep and practice, 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 practice. They're going to be practicing their emergency action plan at their sites. Of course, reminding them that someone's always watching, especially in this digital age. Someone's always recording the game, or if something happened, quickly pressing record on their phone. A lot of times the local news would be at a football game or a soccer match. So having an effective emergency action plan is very, very important in avoiding lawsuits and bad press, as well as, of course, saving someone's life. So again, I will reiterate the goals of the emergency action plan, the 4 things that need to be reached. That's developing it, disseminating responsibilities, practicing it, and reviewing it. This is when I will tell my students what our project is and what their expectations are. So I'll be putting them in groups of 5 or 6. Each will be assigned a venue on campus. We have 5 venues. So we have the big gym, the small gym, and 3 fields. I'm going to give them specific questions that they're going to have to answer, and I'll provide these in handout form. But these include who's in charge of assessing the injury and providing the initial first aid, who's going to call 911, what's the local EMS phone number, where's the nearest landline, where's the athlete's emergency card? This has the phone number of the parents, the insurance information, what hospital they prefer to go to. What happens if there's 2 injured athletes? Who will direct the ambulance to the scene? Which direction it'll come from? They're going to need to know street names. What hindrances might there be at their venue? Is there gates that are locked? Is there a small doorway? Is there stairs? How will these be handled? Who's going to control the crowd? Who's going to get the supplies to the person treating the injured athletes? Who's going to deal with the media? And who's going to communicate with the parents? These are all things that need to be answered ahead of time so that we're not wasting time during an emergency figuring out who is going to do these things. So they're going to have to be going on a scavenger hunt of sorts around campus to figure out some of the answers to these questions. After they answer those questions, those questions are going to help them assign roles to each member of the emergency action team. We're going to operate on the assumption that this is a game. So there'll be a home game where there will be coaches there. There is going to be the athletic trainer will be on site. That is me. We will have an administrator or administrators on site for supervision. We will have security on site. They're usually on site when we have home games or at least on campus somewhere. And if it's football, if it's on the football field, and it's a home game, we do have a team doctor, usually 2 or 3 there. So those things will be available for only that group that gets assigned the football field and only during football. Last but not least, they're going to be pretty psyched about this one, but they're going to present their final product. Of course, this is after I review it, they peer review each other, they practice it and work out all the kinks and have something down on paper. They'll be presenting their final product to our principal, Mr. Babineau, who doesn't necessarily know the emergency action plan yet. He's new at our school, and so is his staff. So they will actually present it to him and or some of the other administrators at one of their admin meetings at school and be given the actual printouts of the emergency action plan so they can establish who is in charge of what when they have, because they have their supervision schedules and who's going to be at each game. So that will make it definitely more authentic for the students. I think they'll be really excited that they'll get to share this with Mr. Babineau, and it will give them the idea that, yes, they did actually develop this thing that we really are going to use, although hopefully we won't have to. Thank you for listening. I hope it makes sense, and good luck on your projects.